And now I can introduce you to Sumayyah. Sumayyah Ahmed has been an Android engineer for 9 years and has worked both at startups and large corporations. She originally comes from California, but is now becoming a Philadelphian. So over to you, Sumayyah.
Hi, everyone. It's really good to see everyone here. Let's get started because we have a lot of stuff to talk about and I cannot wait. All right, let me just start with this. Okay, so this talk, welcome to You Can Be a Mentor, Why and How. And this talk is going to focus on something that's can really become a hurdle the further on you get in your career, and that's mentoring skills. And not just that, but mentoring skills for everyone, regardless of level, regardless of experience. You can be a mentor, you can build these skills, and you can use these skills to really propel your career forward. And this talk is going to help you do that. Also, a quick note that I'm an Android developer, so you're going to see references to Android throughout this talk. But I want to stress, we have people here who are web developers, who are Android developers, who are working in other programming languages. Regardless of platform or experience, this talk is going to be applicable to you too. So if you see the word Android, just mentally put in your platform or language of choice. These are skills that sort of translate across basically any sort of programming skill or background. So with that said, let's get started. My name is Sumayyah Ahmed. I've been an Android engineer for about 9 years, and I spent a lot of time getting mentored throughout my time here. And throughout the companies I worked with, the teams that I was with, I had a couple of formal mentors, but I also got mentored by many other people and many other sources, and we'll talk about all of that. But it was really in the past like 5 or so years that I started giving back this knowledge. That would be, filling in knowledge gaps for teammates and starting some sort of learning organization, basically just engaging in communities, engaging with people. And we'll also talk about how mentoring goes a long way in those situations. But I want to sort of start my mentoring story very, very early on. And let's go back to 2013. This is way back when Android was a very young platform. So if you're working in web, for example, think back to the late 90s. This is the time when Android was technically owned by Google, but there was very little support or tutorials or resources or design. It was kind of a Wild West. And when I started, I was really struggling to figure out what to do, how to do it, what's a good way of doing things. I mean, look at this code here. It's beautifully formatted. It's a snippet from my code base in 2013. But what I'm actually doing here is doing a heavy, long-running network operation on the main thread of my Android app, which is absolutely terrible. It means your app is going to catastrophically crash if there's problems with your network or any other problem with your thread. But that's kind of how Android rolled. People were just throwing together whatever code they could. You could upload this to the Play Store. There was no real guidance. Things slowly started to change, and by 2015, I had started reading more blog posts and watching YouTube videos, caught up on the single Android podcast that there existed at that time, and I was no longer making such catastrophic mistakes. And then fast forward to now, the years between 2015 and now, I joined Comcast and I was suddenly working with this large team of people on a very large scale application. And we started going through all these major transformations in the app, things like moving from a monolithic code base to a modularized microservices style architecture, moving from Java to Kotlin, from retrofit callbacks to RxJava to coroutines, MVP to MVI to MVVM. I mean, if you've been in tech for any number of time, you know that there's always the next thing coming, right? And then the problem is, how do you do it? Because the industry always outpaces the educational material. So it ended up being me and my teammates just working together, using online resources, trying to figure out how to do all of these things. And as you can see, there's sort of a common theme here. And that's the fact that I was getting help And my teammates were getting help from a variety of resources. Because of the nature of engineering, the way that we sort of pluck together all these sources like internet and people and books and documentation and sort of put them together to come up with these solutions that people haven't done before. It's the fact that this is all mentoring. I was mentored by not just my teammates, but online resources like Stack Overflow and YouTube and Medium. And as flawed as these are, oftentimes, these are sometimes the only places you can go to find specific answers. There were companies like Square and JetBrains, conferences like DroidCon. These were the people actually releasing support tooling for Android developers and providing educational materials for Android developers, and really much later, Google itself. So I basically just learned, made catastrophic mistakes, learned again, and gradually started to share the knowledge I had accumulated along the way from all these sources. And that's where I'm guessing a lot of you are today. We have the knowledge, we have the experience, we've all done the work. How do we start sharing? That's where this talk is going to step in. So for the next 25 or so minutes, I'm not going to cover everything to do with mentoring because that would take forever. But I want to focus on something I haven't heard a lot about before, and that's how everybody can be a mentor. Every engineer at every level can be a mentor to others. It doesn't matter if you've been working for 10 years or for 2 years, or if you're a student, or if you haven't programmed at all. You can get started with mentoring skills. You don't have to wait for permission or authority. It doesn't have to be in your job description yet. You can start mentoring. And because it's such a critical skill, we'll get really tactical. We'll talk about how to find mentees, how to find topics to mentor on, and making sure that we get career benefits out of it. And then we'll also talk about the second half of this, the last third of this talk is going to be more about broadening our impact beyond just the immediate group of people we work with. And I started with focusing on Android communities, but really you can put in your programming community of choice here. Why engineering and programming communities really need mentoring, and why that's good for us, because that means by mentoring, we can start to have industry-wide impact. So let's get started. And I'm actually, oh, okay. Sorry, I saw somebody muted and I thought that was me. Let's get started. We all have knowledge to share. This is really the crux of this talk. I really want to start with the most important point. So if there's nothing else you remember we all have knowledge to share. Everybody has some experience or some solution or some fix or even a story to share. And that's what's going to make it mentoring, sharing that knowledge that we have. If you've been an engineer for any length of time, if you've worked on something fairly complicated, you probably know something that's not out there online. That makes you a knowledge repository. That makes you a potential mentor. And let's be honest, we really need it for career growth. So if you start looking at job descriptions for senior level engineers and staff level engineers and management and any sort of higher position in these fields, two words keep coming up: influence and impact. We're expected to not just be technical experts or domain knowledge experts. We're increasingly evaluated on our ability to impact people, large numbers of people, across teams, across organizations, sometimes across business. Mentoring is a huge part of having impact on others and having influence on others. So this becomes a really critical skill. This is something that can propel your career forward from mid-level to senior, or from somebody who's writing code to somebody who starts getting leadership opportunities. Well, how do we get started then? We could wait. You could wait for somebody to come up to you and say, hey, I really like you. I admire you. Will you be my mentor? Unfortunately, it's not likely to happen that often. That's happened to me maybe twice in my entire career. And it's a shame, because this is where most online resources sort of assume that you have this relationship established, or they talk from the point of view of a mentee, like, how to find mentors. It's very rare for something to address, well, if you're a mentor or if you want to mentor, how do you find people if people aren't finding you? So let's not rely on the assumption that mentees are just going to find us. We really won't get anywhere with our mentoring skills if we waited for that to happen. Let's go from passive to active. So we'll start by redefining what we think of as mentoring. This picture is, sort of evocative of what we think of as the classic mentoring relationship. It's this formal, one-on-one, up-down learning relationship where a senior person takes a junior person under their wing and teaches them what they need to know and maybe crafts a learning plan and checks in with them consistently. This is very typical of the mentoring programs that a lot of companies and organizations have. It's great. It's really, really good. It's effective, it works, but it's very limited. That's a downside. Very often, you have to be at a certain level or meet some requirements to qualify as a mentor. And then that means that the pool of available mentors is just a small group of maybe your senior most people. And then you're also limited by their time and availability. So not everybody gets to participate in these relationships. In that case, let's talk about the kind of mentoring that can happen that's not necessarily formal, not necessarily one-on-one, not necessarily up-down, just learning relationships. And for that, I want you to look laterally. Don't look up, don't look down, look around you. All of us work in teams. All of us work with other people. These people are a great resource to start building these relationships for teaching and learning. What I'm talking about is pretty much exactly what this sounds like. It's peer mentoring, using your peers as a network of learning and teaching opportunities. And this is this is great for many reasons. You have the people around you to use as resources. And by use, I mean, not in a clinical way, but the fact that people are already there. We have trust built in. We have open channels of communication. We have a shared context that we work in. This makes the buy-in for mentoring much lower than creating up-down relationships from scratch. So what does this even look like? Remember that we defined mentoring not as this big responsibility where we have to take responsibility for an individual and grow them in their career. It's much less, much more scaled down, much more low stakes, just learning relationships. And the classic example is onboarding. So if you worked in a team before, you've probably been onboarded. You may have onboarded somebody else. This is a classic example of mentoring. An old engineer takes on a new engineer and basically just teaches them. This is our code base. This is our documentation. This is the context of our technical decision making. These are the people to go to for help, everything they need to know to be successful in this new team. And it's completely, regardless of any level you're at, it's just the engineer with that knowledge shares with the engineer who doesn't have it yet. It can be distributing knowledge on a new library or framework or architecture. It doesn't even have to be one-to-one. It could be one engineer creating or facilitating learning groups for one-to-many or many-to-many learning. And that can be something like study groups or presentations or brown bags. And the good news is a lot of companies already have these set up. So the buy-in for this type of learning structure is, again, lower. And note that you don't have to be a senior person mentoring a junior person. Let's take a hypothetical junior engineer, for example, and they make themselves competent in a difficult topic. Say for an Android developer, it could be writing unit tests for coroutines, which is something that a lot of people struggle with, and it's definitely not a beginner topic. So say our hypothetical junior engineer gets good at writing unit tests for coroutines. So they don't just use that to get their work done faster. They actually start doing presentations for the rest of their team and tutorials. Maybe they start pair programming with their teammates to help them gain this knowledge. This is all mentoring. This is all peer mentoring, and it absolutely counts as a form of mentoring. And the key difference between helping somebody one-off, which we do a lot as part of teams, and mentoring is to do it consistently and regularly from some deep area of knowledge and expertise. So say that's us, we know we have peers ready. And this is when I started to hit a snag. When I started peer mentoring, I got stuck because I thought, what can I teach? If I'm trying to mentor my peers, well, there's a reason we're all at the same level, right? We all have the same amount of experience, we're all competent, we're all smart. What do I have to teach that they don't? Well, the answer to this is to look at your team and find the knowledge gaps. Figure out, how is knowledge processed in your particular team? How is it accumulated? How does it disseminated? What is, through what channels and which people? What is that gap between the technical needs of your code base or the future technical needs of your code base and the current skill set of the team right now? That's really the crux to finding that gap. What does your team makeup currently look like? And this is really important because the way that you find the gaps, it's where these gaps reside is going to differ wildly based on the makeup of your team. Maybe you have a large number of new hires or junior engineers. Maybe you're at sort of the opposite situation where your team is very heavily reliant on senior people to be domain knowledge experts. All of these is going to affect how knowledge transfer is done within your team and how expertise is transmitted throughout your team. Let's take an example. Let's pick something tricky, which for Android is going to be Jetpack Compose. It's very new. It's not, difficult, but it's completely different from the way we've been doing UI for the past 10 plus years. If you're an iOS developer, think of Swift UI. If you're a web person, oh my gosh, think back to like when Angular 2 was released or something new and big that was coming in the industry with very little expertise or documentation attached to it. So say that our hypothetical team is coming up against Jetpack Compose. So look around you. Who's going to start learning it first? Who's going to start digging around in that library and figuring out how it works and become the subject matter expert on it for the team? Who's going to start writing code in Compose? Who's going to start coding composables alongside your legacy views? And very often we run into the institutional knowledge problem, which is the fact that in a lot of engineering teams, the senior most people have the responsibility for learning and teaching something new. It's sort of assumed in this case that they'll be the first ones to tackle Compose. And then as time permits, they can kind of help other people with that process. That's not great for anyone. These senior people become blockers, first of all. And that means that the rest of the team gets locked out of complicated and challenging work. And that work is necessary to get them further on in their career. And of course, it's also not great for the senior engineers who suddenly have a double load of mentoring / teaching and writing code. This is a great opportunity for peer mentoring. There's that gap that we talked about. The technical need of the code base is we need code in Compose. This current skill set of the team is maybe 90% of people haven't had a chance to build fluency in Compose. There's the gap. And once you've found the gap, you can start building knowledge bridges. Say in this case, our hypothetical engineer starts learning Compose themselves and then has a learning group where everybody learns Compose together, or facilitates question and answer sessions to start working on Compose. This is something, once you start building bridges, you're actually facilitating knowledge transfer among the team. You're upskilling an entire team at once. This is really powerful. That's what mentoring does. You have the ability to mentor many people at once and actually raise the bar for a large number of people. So find the gaps, build the bridges, and that means we have impact. That means any engineer at any level who's doing this work starts to have impact on others. And that's really powerful because influence and impact are really what starts to push you forward in your career. So we've identified who we want to mentor. We can start with our peers at any level. We can, once we found the gaps in our knowledge, we found topics to mentor on. What could go wrong? Well, now we're doing glue work. If you're not familiar with this term, it actually comes from Tanya Riley's talk, Being Glue, which is a great talk. And she she actually defines glue work as all the non-coding work that goes into making tech teams effective and productive. So think about things like communication and documentation and processes and mentoring. And Tanya covers a lot of stuff in her talk, but there's one critical point that's going to be important for us today. And that's the fact that glue work is expected when you're senior and it's risky when you're not. So if your official job description doesn't include mentoring, you're potentially putting your job at risk by taking time out to mentor others. But we already talked about how it's such a critical skill. So how do we reconcile these things? Well, something that will help you not get fired is focus on relevancy. And this seems obvious, but it's really important. Find relevant topics. Figure out what knowledge gaps are going to move the needle for your team. Find the technical goals that are important. Figure out those gaps. Sometimes there's a tendency to mentor or teach on topics that are interesting to us personally, which obviously makes complete sense. But the Venn diagram of things that are interesting to us and things that are relevant for the team has to have some overlap, and that's the area that you can focus on. And well, not only do we not want to get fired for mentoring, we also want to get credit because mentoring skills are probably as complicated as technical skills, sometimes more so. It's going to be something that requires, it's not just something that can be completed in a semester or a course. It's a skill that's going to take time and effort and consistency, and a large part of your energies are going to go towards developing this skill set over a long period of time. So we want to make sure we're getting a return on our investment. So things to not get you fired from mentoring and things to help you get credit and move your career forward with mentoring. The first thing, again, sort of seems obvious, but everything that you're doing mentoring wise should never be a surprise to your manager. Who you're mentoring, how much time you're spending with them, what you're doing, what you're mentoring on, your manager should be aware of all of this. And this will help, alleviate that situation where you think you're helping people in your team and you're spending so much time helping people in your team that you neglect your real responsibility. And your manager is completely surprised about, hey, why aren't you actually doing what you're getting paid to do? Setting that expectation with your manager that I'm actually developing others on my team, and this is how we're balancing priorities. It has to be a relationship that you work, it has to be a balance that you work out with your manager. And what actually helps is to define your mentoring work in terms of the impact you're actually having. And this can get tricky because mentoring, like other soft skills, is very nebulous when it comes to measurement. I mean, how do you really know if you're mentoring correctly or if your mentoring is effectively? One thing that can help is to look at the people that you're mentoring and what they're doing differently because of you, and define your work in terms of that. So an okay way of expressing your impact might be, hey, I spent time working with engineers X and Y on unit tests. I mean, that's great. The mentoring is sort of implied here. A better way of saying it is, because I spent time working with X and Y on unit tests, our juniors can now write tests with every PR and our test coverage is going up. That's real, quantifiable, measurable impact. You can tell that to your manager. This is going to give your work much more visibility, because that's also important. You have to make your impact visible. It's going to be great for other people if you're quietly mentoring them and helping develop their skills. It may not be great for you if your manager doesn't know that you're responsible for the team upskill. Make your impact visible. Define your work and tell your manager about it. Write it in your end of year reviews. Make sure people know about it. And as always, maintain flexibility. This is the great thing about peer mentoring in particular, because you're not responsible or committed to a specific person. You can mentor when and scale that effort up and down when you need to. There's going to be some seasons in your career where you really need to dig deep into technical skills, some areas where you can really focus on building up your network and your soft skills and your mentoring skills. It's going to be something that develops throughout your career after all. Whew. So we talked a lot about working in the context of a team, working in the context of a company, specifically tech teams. Well, what about mentoring outside of a company? Let's talk about having impact on people, regardless of what company you work for or what particular team that you're working with. Let's talk about the kind of mentoring that can happen uh, across engineers everywhere. Because when you look at it, I, as an Android engineer, I don't just belong to the Android team at Comcast or the Android team at some other company. I belong to the cohort of Android engineers everywhere. So this is a great potential pool for learning and for teaching. And this is the part of the talk that's you're going to see the word Android a lot, but that's because I am much more familiar with the Android community. For those of you who are working in the web community or iOS or other programming communities, just wherever you see Android, put in your community of choice. A lot of this is going to be applicable to you. And what I hear from a lot of new Android engineers, because I do work with college level CS students, and I work with people who just got out of college, and they say Android is a tough field to break into. And I'm sure everybody is going to have every field is tough to break into when you're first starting out. For Android in particular, there's just so many ways of doing things. Things like view binding. Somebody new to Android is going to be so confused because you can use butter knife or Kotlin synthetics or Android view binding. I mean, how do they know what to choose and why? There's things like theming, which have like a million ways to implement. Even fundamentals like what type of activity to override. And that's exacerbated because there's a lot of incomplete learning resources. So Android in particular had a documentation problem, especially early on, but every engineering discipline faces this problem. A lot of the online resources are pretty much out of date. I talked a lot about using Stack Overflow and basically the internet as learning resources, but they have to be used with caution because even a Stack Overflow post from maybe 2 years ago, which is not that long, can be completely out of date. And also something that I hear from new engineers is you're never really sure when you're following online advice, whether somebody's actually using best practices or if they're just giving you terrible code. And this is something from my experience. It's honestly true that the work being done at the production level is often way more complex than the stuff that's covered in documentation. A lot of the code bases I've worked in have been this mishmash of like old legacy code and new code and code architected one way and another code architected a different way. Somebody just coming into the industry is they don't have the training to deal with the production level work right away. And again, very likely it's the institutional knowledge problem. We talked about this in the team context, but it's also very true across industries as well. It's always sort of assumed that there's going to be a senior engineer around who knows all the answers and who can guide you towards making decisions. But if you're not hired yet, if you don't have access to these senior engineers, you're kind of stuck. This is a problem that a lot of people have run into, and it's terrible because there's no easy pipeline towards becoming an Android engineer or a web engineer. There's always been a demand because it's just so tough to make those first few years make sense. Android developers in particular come from web and boot camps and other disciplines like product departments, as well as CS programs. And of course, even you're assuming that you graduate from a CS program, there's no guarantee that you understand what is going on when you're trying to start your career as an engineer. All of this makes mentoring not optional. It makes mentoring necessary. Anybody who has that experience now is way ahead of somebody just starting out. And this is knowledge that doesn't exist online. It doesn't exist in books or documentation. It exists in the people who've done the work. So that's also great because we as engineers, we as people who have something to share, now have the ability to make an impact across the industry. Let's talk about how to do this. There's probably local meetups near you where For Android engineers, it could be Google developer groups. There's probably local meetup groups for other disciplines, other programming communities. These are places where new grads or new developers go to for help and guidance. These are good places to be. There's tech boot camps that are in the middle of training. They often need mentors to help guide students with the work and after they graduate from boot camps. Online communities like Women Who Code. Write blog posts, speak at conferences, or make YouTube videos, whatever type of communication works for you. All of this is going to require effort. It's not as easy as, talking to the team that you work with every day. It requires us to put ourselves in new environments, make new connections, and it takes deliberate effort. And it takes the fact that, you have to approach it from a place of humility and be open to learning yourself, because a big part of mentoring others is being open to being mentored yourself. These relationships aren't one way. There's always going to be a two-way relationship here. So if there's three things that I really wanted to focus on in this talk, the first one is that anyone at any level can develop mentoring skills. You don't have to qualify. You don't have to be a senior person. You don't need authority. Anything that you have to share means you can mentor. It requires deliberate intention and effort. It's a skill that you invest in the same way that you would invest in technical skill, but it has huge payoffs because mentoring, first of all, will make a huge impact on the industry. And second of all, it gives you the type of skill, the type of influence that forms a big part of leadership, which is needed for any career progression. So again, thank you for coming today. We are going to have a lot of time for questions, so I look forward to answering all your questions. If you're interested in more resources on mentoring, Florian, I don't know his last name, has a great talk on becoming a mentor, why and how, and it's posted on the DroidCon website. It's actually great tactical advice for mentoring for any discipline. Tanya Riley's talk, of course, is amazing. She talks about the important soft skills for engineers and the pitfalls we can run into along the way. So thanks so much, Navati. And yeah, we have time for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll share these links in the chat so everybody can access these.
Awesome. That was brilliant. Because I'm sure there are many others too, but I've been hesitating around this whole thing around mentoring. But like you said, everyone can mentor, it can be a peer mentor. So this is great. And yeah, thank you so much. This is so essential, right? Like for the community. And yeah, thank you. Yeah, we do have some questions. There were some that came in from our Instagram poll the other day. I'll just pull that up. So there were some questions around what your mentor should or could be like. For instance, should your mentor be your friend? Or is your mentor just for career stuff? And could they be just a teacher or something more?
Yeah, this is a great question because the definition of mentor is also very nebulous. It's the traditional definition is a mentor is like your teacher, the person who is there for you. That doesn't always work in practice. I always recommend have multiple mentors, and that way it takes the load off of that single person to be everything for you. So maybe there's one person you talk to for, let's say, Android advice. There's one person you talk to for career advice, like how do I negotiate? How do I talk to my boss? Maybe there's peers you talk to and you open that discussion about how do we negotiate salaries or something like that. These are all, and these can be your friends too. Like these people can be your peers, can be your friends, your senior mentors can be friends too. It's basically who are you asking for advice and on what topic, and it doesn't have to be one person for everything.
That's true. Also, we have, how often should you meet with your mentee? So if you're in a mentorship program.
Yeah, this again varies quite a bit if you're mentoring somebody and you're in an official mentorship program, you may be required to meet with them at a certain frequency. So if you're going through this as part of an organization, you may have checkpoints that you're supposed to have. If you're in a not a formal relationship, this can be as often as you want. Maybe they can reach out to you ad hoc with questions. Maybe you have a monthly check-in. It's all going to be up to what the needs of that relationship are.
That makes sense. Yeah, and like Wui's calling out that it that you advised from the previous question, having multiple mentors. Yeah, I totally agree. That makes sense. Like you don't need to just have one and just focus on that one mentor. You can learn different skills from different folks.
Yeah,
so that's awesome. Thank you for that. And how do you know if you're ready in terms of skills to be a mentor? I know you kind of touched upon this, but yeah.
Yeah. Again, a lot of this talk was focusing on, well, this is what you can share. And it doesn't have to be the fact that you don't have to learn this massive new thing to be able to teach something. It could be whatever you have confidence and expertise and competency in. So let's say that you're an entry-level engineer and you don't have a lot of work experience, but you have a lot of interview experience. That's something to mentor on. Or maybe you're great at organizations and you can share about, okay, here's how to set up your IDE. Here's how to be a productive developer. These are the ways I focus on productivity. So there's always something that you can share at any level. You don't have to go out of your way to teach, although of course that's also really good.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, those are our Instagram questions, and we have one from Nisha. Could you please also touch upon how to find mentors, because I have been looking for one for so long?
Yeah, I feel this quite a lot because finding people to mentor you is also very tricky. It's very awkward asking somebody to be your mentor. One thing I would say is there's a few ways to approach this. You can look for a formal program. So a lot of places, if you're part of a company, they likely already have this. But if you're not working, there's a lot of educational organizations and career development organizations that have mentorship programs. I don't have any off the top of my head, but but a lot of organizations are available through LinkedIn, and they will advertise their mentorship programs through LinkedIn. So you could go the formal mentorship route. Or one other way to find mentors is to involve yourself in a community. So either things like Women Who Code or your local meetups, meet people there and just start asking questions. And if they are helpful and if they're patient with you, keep asking them questions, and that's your mentor.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, either go through a program or join a community, and I think that's helped me a lot.
Yeah.
For sure. Great. And then Smriti was asking, as someone new to the tech industry, what would a healthy mentor-mentee relationship look like?
Oh, this is also a really good. This is a really good question. This, by the way, doesn't have to be specific to the tech industry. I would say a healthy mentor and mentee relationship is one in which both parties are satisfied with what they're getting out of it. And this seems like a very basic definition, but if you're asking somebody questions and they're not really being helpful, you can stop. You don't have to maintain that. You can just switch to something else. You can just be a casual acquaintance with them, for example. If, for example, you are mentoring somebody and you're not seeing the fact that they're taking your advice a certain way, that's a sign for either you to change your approach or maybe you aren't the right mentor for them. It doesn't have to be, you're not always going to be promised to this one person for this one topic. Switch it around a bit. I think also as well as the fact that you're satisfying, that both of you are getting satisfactory experiences out of it. It should always be a respectful relationship, and also countered with learning on both sides. People should be open to learning on both sides, and you should always feel like you can give feedback as a mentee, even to a very senior person. You should always feel comfortable giving feedback. That's sort of a healthy relationship to me.
Right. Yeah, that's true. You should definitely be comfortable in that relationship. So here's another question. I'm mentoring a junior at work for a while now, but now he has learned a skill set which I haven't. How do I let him mentor me without affecting our positions?
Oh, yay, this is great because um, that's amazing because now you're the mentee, right? Um, let's say that you were in this position of you're the teacher, you're setting the agenda, like this person is coming to you for advice, and now switching roles sort of takes it's a big mental switch because you're used to taking on roles in these relationships, right? And now you have to relinquish these roles and swap them. But that's also really good because what you're now building is not an up-down mentor-mentee relationship. You're building a two-way learning relationship, and that's something that is going to benefit you in the long run. And it's really great that now your mentee has something to teach you. That means you're also benefiting from this relationship and all the effort that you put into it.
Yeah, yeah. But that was a very interesting question, and it can totally happen, right? Yeah, I think these are the questions that we have so far. And you've been, I mean, people have loved it. Like, there's so much, people have loved your advice, and everyone's so excited. And I'm hoping that everyone's gonna go and mentor, folks from all of this. Yeah.
Yes. Well, what I can do is, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm going to post my full name in here. Sorry, I'm also going to try and find a link to my LinkedIn profile, but this is me on LinkedIn. And anybody can feel free to just ping me on LinkedIn, or of course on the Women Who Code Slack. I'm always happy to answer questions or just be in touch with people who want to talk.
It's awesome. Okay, cool. I think I found your link.
Oh yeah, thank you, Navati.
Sure. Yeah, this is your LinkedIn page. Yeah, and yeah, that's really nice of you. I'm sure folks are gonna reach out. I know I am. So, yeah, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. We had amazing questions, and I'm so happy that people joined and participated.
Yeah, thank you for your time. We really appreciate this, and yeah, have a great rest of your Friday and your weekend.
Same.
Once again.
All right, take care.
Take care. See ya. Bye.
Bye.